Joining us right now with a look at what the economy will look like under President Biden is Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. And Senator, things are already heating up a bit. What do you think we can be in for? What should we expect the next 4 years?
Well, I think we're seeing this President Trump, leave in many ways the way he came in. I remember sitting 4 years ago when he gave one of the darkest inauguration speeches in American history. I was sitting with John McCain, and he was astonished at the tone of his speech, mean-spirited, no willingness to reach out. That really was the hallmark of Donald Trump's 4 years. And now we're leaving with, unfortunately, 400,000 Americans dead. We saw 140,000 job loss recently. We've seen in this last day him leaving with pardoning a lot of his cronies. And literally, one of the things I don't know if you guys have talked about yet, he did away with the drain the swamp executive order he put in place so that his staff, who I'm not sure are going to be very marketable, can immediately go out and become lobbyists. So I think he's left an economy that's reeling. He's left a country that's divided. I think Joe Biden brings the right approach. Even if you don't like Joe Biden politics, you know this guy is going to bring enormous amounts of empathy. I think first thing he's got to do is make sure, and I think we're geared for this, the vaccine distribution gets organized and rolled out in a first world approach, not a third world approach. I think from the economy, as somebody who was part of the putting together the last COVID package, the bipartisan package, where we basically said, enough with the political leadership, we need to do our own thing. I want to see a little more of the results of that $900 billion. Biden's put out a marker at 1.9 trillion, a big number. I think there may be some repositioning of some of that. But the good news, again, is I think Biden has said he does not want to try to force this through some kind of reconciliation process, that he really wants us to get 60 votes. So this bipartisan coalition that's now grown to close to 20 senators, I think we're going to have a lot to say in terms of getting this next package out.
I think there are a lot of people in this country who would like to see some bipartisanship and maybe see a little bit of healing that takes place. Usually a president gets a little bit of a honeymoon period. Those first days are pretty important, but this time is setting up for potential showdowns already. We know that McConnell and Schumer are already scuffling over the idea of whether the filibuster will continue or not. McConnell would like to see that threat removed before he says he can negotiate on other issues. And then you have the impeachment hearing that's hanging over all of this. So what do you think realistically can get done with so many other things that are calling for attention, including the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, Becky, I think that at some level, some of this squawking back and forth seems to become kind of the accepted means. I can tell you yesterday, my committee, the Intelligence Committee, held a hearing on Avril Haines to be the next Director of National Intelligence. It was thoughtful. We asked her hard questions, but there was broad bipartisan support. I'm not sure I'm going to get a unanimous vote, but I'm going to get a overwhelmingly bipartisan vote out of that committee. And my sense was, and I say this from my Republican colleagues now, I've been proud this committee's, we did a 3-year Russia investigation and we kept it bipartisan. But this group of Republican colleagues, I think they're ready to turn the page as well. They know our country faces enormous challenges. Candidly, one of the biggest challenges, at least on a propaganda basis, we face right now is the incredible gift that was given to Vladimir Putin with the images of those thugs walking through the halls of Congress 2 weeks ago. Those images of American democracy in disarray was about as good a gift as Donald Trump has ever given to Putin. This helps our enemies in China, North Korea, Iran as well. But I think there's an awful lot of us who are at the rank and file level in the Senate who are tired of the bickering, want to get something done. And on the economic basis, I'm sure we'll make changes to what Biden has proposed, but I think we'll get a package done.
You said you think that there will be some markers that move from that original plan the Biden administration has already laid out for $1.9 trillion. What do you think the big pieces are that are up for grabs? And I guess I would start with minimum wage. How likely is that to get bipartisan support in the Senate?
Listen, I'm a strong supporter of minimum wage. I think we do need to raise our minimum wages up to $15 an hour. That barely is still above the poverty line. It's a couple dollars above the poverty line. I think it can be phased in. I think there'll be some pushback there. I think there'll be some concern on whether those checks, which I support additional checks, but whether there can be more targeting towards those most in need. And as a former governor, I was a big advocate for state and local government funding. And through the fall, and I know many localities particularly have been hurt, but the actual revenue loss numbers out of many states, not states like New York has been really creamed, but a lot of states have not had the revenue loss which were projected. In Virginia, we projected a $1.3 billion revenue loss. We actually ended up with a surplus. So how can we potentially readjust? I mean, one of the things the package did not include is additional broadband deployment. I know he may be reserving that for a infrastructure package, but boy, you could take some of those dollars out of a couple of these categories and put down a $80 to $100 billion broadband initiative and make sure that every American home, no matter where you live, had high-speed broadband delivery as well as affordable broadband delivery, and that would be a huge economic stimulus.
So let me just get this correct. As a Democratic senator, you are in favor of taking some of the money out of the $350 billion set aside for states and municipalities? I'm in favor of getting real numbers in terms of how much state revenue loss there was. There were a number of states, and again, including when we went through this negotiation in December, that really didn't have the amount of loss that they'd expected. And again, I speak to my own state where we ended up with a surplus, or we're riding towards a fiscal year surplus rather than the $1.3 billion loss that we've had. There are a number of local governments, and this is where you need to have a little finer tune. Do I think there needs to be a state and local category? 100%. Does the number need to be a full 350? I would say let's make sure that we have some target for every state, and then potentially a secondary category for those states and localities that have had significant revenue loss. And they are states like New York. They are states and big cities that have had complete shutdowns. They are tourist areas. New Orleans, for example, has had huge amounts of loss. They depend a lot on tourism. Again, I think we ought to be targeting some of this relief because there are a number of other areas that, quite honestly, I think we could spend this money more efficiently, both from an economic stimulus standpoint, but also from a long-term growth standpoint.
So, Senator, are you a yes on ending the filibuster?
Listen, I've said during my rehiring process last year, I said it would take an awful lot for me to end the filibuster. I don't think we ought to be coming in willy-nilly and changing the rules. Now,
so
I also would expect.
You'd say no?
But let me just finish. I would also expect my Republican colleagues not to come in with a single mantra the way they did under Obama, which is let's make this president unsuccessful. They want to work with Joe Biden. I think we ought to keep the rules. And there are other Democratic members like Joe Manchin who are already a much more definitive no than I am. But I'm not inclined to move towards that unless we.
How about D.C. statehood or the Supreme Court?
I've never favored additional packing of the Supreme Court, additional judges. I think that's been tried in the past during Roosevelt. I don't think it makes sense. But I have been on record for the last close to 10 years that I think the District of Columbia and those close to 700,000 folks, more folks live in the district than I believe 4 or 5 other states. They ought to have a right to have representation in statehood.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Senator.
Sounds like you're cutting me off with the music there.
It wasn't me. Some people do think I have that button. I've asked for it.
You get an answer you don't like and you cue the music.
I've asked for that button, and they won't do it. They won't give it to. I just like cutting people. We have played around with that where we pretend to cut someone's mic off, and I get audio to do it, but I don't have that button either. Senator, thanks.
Thanks, guys.
You would come back if I cut you off.